where we stopped?
Where do we stop, Alan?
Okay.
Could be the bottom of the page, I'm not certain.
Yeah, 524. 524 near the bottom. And we are the spirit of the garden? The spirit of the garden.
The garden of the spirit.
Or the garden of the spirit. In memory of Malka Ruth Bas Ruvain.
Bas
Moshe.
I'm Ruvain.
Bas Moshe.
You are?
Oh, you're named after your father's father. Okay. Bas Moshe. All right. So we did the faces of the chariot.
Yes.
And how the different creatures descend from those, from the Chayos HaKodesh, the holy beasts, the holy creatures that were in the divine chariot. Right? They had a lion, face of a lion, an ox, an eagle, and a person.
Ezekiel.
I
said Ezekiel.
Yes. Okay, all kosher animals are from the ox.
He read that Haftarah. I remember. He read it. I remember him reading it.
Okay.
I'm just pointing it out.
Shavuos.
Yeah.
We talked about the difference between a domesticated animal and non-domesticated animal. Right? Distinction, behema and chaya. And we have kosher animals that are non-domesticated, too. All right. Let's go 524, the animal soul of man. All right?
Okay. The animal soul of man descends from the human face of the chariot, whether the holy or the impure one, as detailed at length in the Zohar. When a person sins, he draws down upon himself a spirit from the side of impurity, which has complete sway over him. But if he makes an effort to purify himself, he's assisted from on high to do so. When the temple stood and he brought his offering, his atonement was nonetheless suspended until he repented, broke the pride of that spirit, and humbled it. Thus the individual has the power to determine to which chariot's influence he submits himself, the holy one or the impure one.
We said there's the holy chariot or throne, and then a corresponding one of impurity. So, yeah, we did this last time. So a person has the power to connect to either one, to derive nourishment from either one. Okay, go ahead, Jim.
All this nonetheless applies only to the superficial, that is, the animal soul. For the inner, divine soul is always entirely holy. The divine soul remains pure, undefiled by the influence of the holy chariot on the soul, on the animal soul, even if the person elects to sin.
The animal soul in Hebrew is called the behema, the nefesh habahamis. That is a translation. It's not a description. The description is that it's the instinctive soul. An animal is driven by instinct. So the instinct is not bad. It's its instinct. It's what it does. too, the instinctive soul is not bad, but it runs our bodily functions and is driven by instinct. So it can be for good, for holiness, and it could be for things that are apart from holiness. Okay, page 525 at the top. Go ahead, Jim.
It is from there, that is from the divine soul, that the inner nefesh, ruach, and neshama are derived. Although both the divine soul and the animal soul possess all five aspects, from yechida to nefesh, when we speak of the three aspects of the nefesh, ruach, neshama, we are usually referring to those aspects of the divine soul. When we speak of the animal soul, we are usually only considering the nefesh.
All right. Rudy, 525. Now, it sometimes happens.
Now, it sometimes happens that when the soul of an evil man is descending into the world to be born, and at the same time the soul of a domesticated or wild animal is being emanated downward into a physical animal being born, the human soul is grafted onto the soul of the animal in order to punish the human soul in accordance with the decisions of the heavenly court. This is a description of a transmigration of souls, or gilgul, wherein someone who dies without having repented, in other words, having done tshuva for his sins, is sent down again into an animal body. This experience is extremely painful and frustrating for the divine soul, in that it cannot express its divine nature as it can in a human body by learning Torah and doing mitzvot and so forth. This experience is meant to demonstrate to this soul what it has wrought by its sins in its previous lifetime or lifetimes, and thereby scour it of its enamor with the material side of life. Once cleansed of this, the soul can proceed with its ascent in the spiritual realms. The purpose of divine punishment is not to exact retribution or vengeance, but to effect the restitution of the soul to its former proper spiritual status.
Which soul is this?
What do you mean, which soul is
Is
this?
this the instinctive soul or the godly soul?
It's the human soul that is
But
grafted
we
on.
just
Even though it's
mentioned.
an evil soul, it's still a soul.
But we just mentioned there are two souls.
Yeah,
There's
so
an
this is probably
instinctive
the
soul
behemoth.
and a godly soul, and we said that the godly soul doesn't get tarnished.
So it's probably
So
the
the instinctive
behemoth.
soul.
It's the animal side of the human
I
soul.
would say it's both. It's both, because it's the animal side of the human soul and the human soul, and it's frustrating because the divine soul is stuck, grafted on, and can't respond. The animal soul is also stuck. A new thing. The animal soul. I'm saying that it says here, this is painful and frustrating for the divine soul in that it cannot express its divine nature as it can in a human body. So we know it's divine soul there.
So it's the divine soul.
Okay.
Is that Jabba the Hutt on the line? So it's okay. So that's the divine soul.
But there's also got to be part of the animal soul too, because you've got the evil descending, because it's the evil part of the man has to be that animal soul that never did teshuvah. It's the man that's done evil. We said before the divine soul doesn't sin. It's the animal soul.
Not only doesn't soul, it remains pure.
So it's the animal soul that sins. What is evil? Evil has to be the animal soul that's when you talk about an evil man, it's got to be the evil part, that which is done impure instinctively. So that goes down with it. I'm saying both go. That's what I'm saying.
Think both?
Both.
It says divine.
It says divine here, but it
then
says
that's the godly soul.
when the soul of an evil man is descending into the world to be born. At the same time, the soul of wild animals being emanated. The human soul is both. Is grafted to the soul of animal. What human soul is not just divine soul. It's both human and I don't know. It's an argument. I mean, how are we? You're punishing the human soul. You're not going to punish the divine soul. It says here, the human soul is grafted onto the soul of the animal in order to punish the human soul in accordance with the decisions of the heavenly court.
Yeah.
So you're not punishing the divine part. You're punishing the animal part
No,
of that human soul.
It says the divine soul.
Punishing the human soul, and the retribution, that's the cleansing, is of the behemoth side.
I understand. That's what I'm talking about.
Side.
It's the evil, but the behemoth side is the animal side that's become impure. That's
the
there.
evil side.
Right.
Okay.
That's
It
the
isn't
evil
in
side.
and of itself. It's not bad. It's instinctual, but it became impure.
It seems to me that the godly soul, the divine soul, is now being trapped in the animal.
Yeah. The divine soul
here
clearly
it says,
trapped.
on the one hand, he says that the divine soul remains pure
Yeah.
and is undefiled.
Correct.
On the other hand, and then in Hebrew he calls it neshama. We see that he says that we refer to the the instinctive soul as nefesh.
Nefesh. Right.
Even though it does contain the five.
They all have
levels,
5, but
we call it nefesh.
Right.
In Hebrew he calls it neshama, which is the divine soul.
right.
So even though it's undefiled and remains pure, it's been attached, and now it has to be cleansed, and it goes into the animal.
So basically, this world is a washing machine.
What?
This world is a washing machine.
The cleansing is a washing machine,
Yeah, but it takes place in this world.
or maybe not in this world.
Where else would it take place?
If it
In what do you call
yes,
it?
and what do you call it?
And afterward.
Purgatory.
Purgatory. Yeah. Okay. Yeah, but those are the real evil ones. Those are the pure evil souls.
No.
All people go through that.
Just about everybody's going through it.
Yeah, we all go through purgatory. We all need cleansing.
Some more than others.
Some it could be one day.
Yeah.
Some it could be 12 months. God forbid.
Yeah.
Some we say Kaddish for 11 months because we don't want to assume that the person is stuck there for 12 months. So some it could be for any amount of time. And what a person does, the trouble that happened to a person in this world, he gets credit for.
But I thought there was a separate place for the real, like the Hitlers of the world.
Yeah, that's
Truly evil ones.
that's
So we could talk about the 99.9%.
Yeah, all right. Because you know who gives a phenomenal description of the whole process is that Svardi Rav, that book, what's it called, Mincha something?
Minchas, yeah,
Zev
Yitzchak.
got you? Yeah, I don't know if you read about.
I read part of it. I started.
Amazing.
Is that the way
Amazing
the
description.
pure evil gets trapped in its.
It talks about the shaking of the coffin and the angels that come down and
That's
it drops down the mace from
That book is very intense.
a descent based upon how much evil he's done, and then it's a very frightening experience.
That book is very intense.
The mace, the dead body.
I don't know if you watched Alona Nava.
The guy who came back?
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's 2 hours, his class. alonanava.com.
Yeah.
Very graphic. Very,
Yeah, he talks about it.
stark, amazing. Anyway, but we did have this last time, and I mentioned last time that for a divine soul to come into an animal, from my understanding is that it is uncommon. It's not a common occurrence.
Well, it depends on what preceded.
But it's not not the normal thing. It's not ordinary. It's out of the ordinary when
So
this
it
happens.
depends on if that individual performed an extraordinary action, then that's part of the retribution. It depends on what preceded.
Maybe he did it, and he doesn't end up in.
Well, it says here without any teshuvah, without having repented.
It is my understanding is, just from what I've read and seen, it's an unusual occurrence.
Okay.
Okay, it can happen, but it's not the common. Common is that the soul goes through Gehenna, purgatory, to be cleansed, purified. What do you call that? And then the soul is born again into another person, into another human being, and that is what usually happens, what usually occurs. Purged. The soul is purged of any evil, and then it is born again into a body, into a human body. And to be trapped like this is very unusual. Okay, the 525. Rudy, go ahead. This is where we stopped last time.
With this, we can understand the mystery of the sacrifices which bring close those who are far.
Just one moment. I think I mentioned last week, I don't know if it was on the air or afterwards, that it says that someone, I guess in the writings of Arizal, someone who commits adultery can come back
As a Gamal.
as a camel. You remember I said that?
Yes.
And so David HaMelech was worried about his whole situation with Bathsheba. I guess retroactively it came out that she was not a married woman, but it wasn't clear at the time. And events afterwards showed that she wasn't married, and it's a whole technical, legal discussion that I don't want to get into now. But he realized that he was exonerated, and so he said, Ashira Lash.
Gesundheit. Gesundheit.
I'm working on it. Okay, we need a sneeze button on the video. Thank you. So he says, Ashira Lashem ki gomal alai. He said, I will sing to Hashem because His great kindness overwhelms me. And the Hebrew word, great kindness, gamal, is the same word for camel. So he kind of was thanking Hashem that he was spared the experience of being a camel. Okay, I'm sorry, Rudy. Now you could go ahead. Sorry for the interruption.
Or he could have come back as Nasser.
As what?
As Nasser.
Nasser?
Nasser, yeah.
Abdul Gamal. Gamal.
Oh, the Gamal.
Okay. Yeah, I got it.
It can also happen sometimes. The Hebrew word for sacrifice, korban, is from the word for close, karov. The sacrifice is designed and intended to bring the offerer close to Hashem. It can also happen sometimes that the sinner descends.
Wait, why?
Why does the sacrifice bring the person close?
No. Why with this can we understand the mystery of the sacrifices? What does sacrifice have to do with anything?
Well, it's talking about the animal.
The animal soul. Yeah. You're bringing your animal soul. It's and to purify it, to cleanse it, to purge it.
Yes, and it's connected to the faces of the animals in the holy chariot.
Okay.
Okay. Now go ahead. I've interrupted you a lot.
No, that's fine. It can also happen sometimes that the sinner descends and is found in the animal's food. In either case, whether he is reincarnated into the animal or its food, the animal is thereafter offered on the altar. And when the proper rites are performed on it, the human soul within it is brought close again to its source and rectified.
Okay. So that is that. All right, Alan. 525 at the bottom.
Even if the sacrificial animal does not contain any reincarnated human soul within it, it nonetheless contains within it something of the 288 sparks from the vessel's world of Tohu that fell and shattered. These are now rectified. All animals, and indeed all physical reality, contain sparks from the fallen world of Tohu, as we have explained previously. When the animal is sacrificed, it elevates these sparks, as well as sparks from the animal kingdom generally. This
Okay, 526.
This also explains why there is unfit treif and fit kosher food. If the animal after being slaughtered is found to be fit and is then eaten by a fit individual, it indicates that there is a spark of holiness in it, and fortunate is the one who elevates it. But if it is found to be unfit, this indicates that the time has not yet come for it to be liberated from the clutches of evil. Inasmuch as these forces of evil are allegorically called the dog, we are therefore commanded, you shall cast it to the dogs.
So it says that if an animal is injured and an animal died through injury, like being attacked by another animal, so obviously it's not slaughtered, it's not kosher, so the Torah says throw it to the dogs. Throw it to the dog. Or ye shall cast it to the dogs.
Fascinating. Interesting.
Okay.
One of the worst things you can say to one of the worst things one Arab can say to another Arab is yakelb.
Yakelb?
Dog.
Yakelb,
Your dog.
you dog.
Your dog.
Dog.
You dog?
Yeah. As a matter of fact, when Arafat went back to Egypt after Camp David, when Clinton had offered him $40 million and immediate statehood, everything like that, he went back home to Egypt, to Cairo, to stand up in front of all his brethren to give a report, and he said, I turned them down, and they called him Yakelb, because they said, you're basically an idiot.
He should have taken it.
Yeah, so they called
And
him
this is-
Yakelb, you dog.
It is in Egypt,
Yeah, so.
not the Palestinians.
He was from Egypt.
He's an Egyptian, he was from Cairo.
Arafat's
Yeah, he was an
Egyptian.
Egyptian, he had nothing to do with the Palestinians, it was all invented, but
But
the
this
point
like
is.
this is like the people the reporting back to the
No, this is in front of all the Arab
masses.
states. The Arab states.
The Arab
22
League.
Arabs, the Arab League.
the Arab League.
Arab
Yeah,
League.
The Arab League, like in a
The
league.
league.
He wasn't standing out to it like
No,
a
no,
hundred
no,
thousand
no,
people.
no,
Arab League.
He went to the Arab League to give them
Okay.
a report and how he stood up to the Americans and he turned them down and they called him Yakelb and he just got
Really,
completely infuriated. It's the worst thing you can say.
well,
The
40
worst.
million is nothing. He had $1 billion in the bank.
It wasn't
It's
the money,
interesting
it was
that
the
this-
state. He was going to give him a
This
state.
kind of sheds light on that. That I just thought of that. It's just amazing.
That
The thing is, though, is
Here-
that,
Yakel.
that the dogs did not bark at the Jews in Egypt, and we give them the scraps. The dogs in Egypt.
Yes.
We give them the scraps.
as like
It's a reward to a great extent.
reward.
Hmm.
I can't think of the word. Compensation.
Yeah.
All right. Yeah. Okay. So I didn't know that. They always translate with the monkeys and the pigs. I guess it's in there.
I guess so.
Yeah.
They're all-
monkeys, pigs, dogs. Yeah, same thing.
And okay, so
It's
here,
anonymous.
these forces of evil. Okay. This is until.
This is until its punishment has been completed, and it is reincarnated again into a fit animal, and a fit individual eats it. It will then be elevated.
If you remember, a few months ago we had about the Egel, the golden calf, that it was engineered by the leaders of the Erev Rav,
Right.
the mixed multitude,
Yeah.
who were two sons of Bilam,
Right.
Yeah.
named Umbris and Umbris,
Mm-hmm.
and their grandfather, the father of Bilam, had been transmigrated into the grass, and in order to elevate him, they made a golden calf and fed the grass to the golden calf, so that they could elevate their grandfather. Right. Okay.
Not all animals belonging to kosher species are permitted to be eaten by Jewish law. Such animals have to be properly slaughtered according to Jewish law. Assuming nothing went awry with the slaughtering, the animal is then inspected to see if there are any signs of fatal lesions on the lungs or other conditions that would indicate that it was on its way to die anyway, before it was slaughtered. If this is the case, it is considered unfit, or treif, literally torn, since such internal injuries usually result from the animal having been torn by some animal of prey. The Torah prescribes that such carrion be given to the dogs, since, although it may not be eaten, benefit may still be derived from it.
There are some foods that are forbidden, that are not only forbidden to be eaten, but we can't even derive any benefit. You just gotta spill it out.
Chuck it.
Yeah, you can't give it as a gift to someone who's allowed to eat it, or give it to your animals, or sell it. So it doesn't fall into that category. Ordinary, non-kosher food, non-kosher meat, you can give it, you can have benefit, you can use it to feed animals.
The fit individual referred to here is one who eats in order to serve Hashem. If he does, the energy and mass he derives from eating the food is elevated into holiness. If he does not, then the animal vitality either remains at the level of the animal, or worse, in the case of someone who intentionally commits a sin, is caused to descend into the realms of explicit evil. If the slaughtered animal is found to be unfit to be eaten or sacrificed, it means that the soul or divine spark it was hosting is not yet ready to be elevated by human consumption, and must return again to repeat the process until it is sufficiently scrubbed of its existential crust to ascend into holiness. From the above passage, we see clearly how at least one aspect of the sacrificial rite is considered synonymous with eating, and that the same dynamic of rectifying the primordial shattering of the vessels of Tohu, which was later acted out in the primordial sin of the tree of knowledge, applies to both. From here come all the sayings of our sages, that a man's table is like an altar, and effects atonement for him, the custom to salt the bread, just as the sacrifices were salted, and so forth. The cosmic responsibility each of us bears when he lifts his fork to his mouth is evident from this passage as well.
What's this responsibility? What does eating have in common with the sacrifices? Let's do this in our own words.
It elevates the broken vessels. It elevates the broken vessels in which there is a spark of divine energy if we are doing it in the proper way. And if we're not, it's the other way.
Do it all over again. And again,
there's an implication that the source of it is the original sin. That's the implication. It says here.
What is the word it uses?
It says here, the same dynamic of rectifying the primordial shattering of the vessels of Tohu, which was later acted out in the primordial sin of the tree of knowledge.
It was acted out.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Yeah.
Hello? Hi. Yeah, I'm in the middle of something. I'll call you back before 9, okay? You're welcome. Bye. Yeah, that's how it was expressed in this world.
How what was expressed?
Hmm?
How what was expressed?
The primordial shattering
Primordial.
of the
Primordial.
vessels. That's how we say it in Chicago.
oh,
Yeah.
Huh? It says, which was later acted out in the primordial sin of the tree of knowledge.
Can't eat the fruit of that
I guess that's how it got expressed in this world.
tree. You're not
Which is why
I'm not
Hashem
sure.
didn't want Adam to and Chava to
eat from the
from
tree.
it.
eat from that tree
From that tree.
because they're not elevating.
Or you're
The
saying
tohu.
the eating of the tree, eating from the tree, caused the whole shattering.
Or
Right.
reshattered.
Didn't the shattering happen
Before. The shattering was
happened
before.
That's how
Tohu,
creation.
isn't it? Isn't that Bereshit?
That's how the creation occurred.
Didn't we learn that
Except
in
the light
Bereshit?
descended and the vessels couldn't take
Right.
the power of the light and they shattered.
And then ore is right.
And it's those
A different form
components
of light comes.
from which this world was created.
Yeah. I don't have an answer to where you're going.
He doesn't know where he's going.
Well, he
No, I
doesn't
know where I'm going.
either.
I know where I'm going.
Where?
It's
Is this the trigger?
it's
Is
the
this the
sacrifice.
cause?
The sacrifices
It says
are
that.
apparently
Primordial
an
shattering,
extension of that original sin.
which
the
was
original-
later acted out in the primordial sin of the tree of knowledge. So the primordial shattering takes place first. Which is what we
shattering
learn in
takes first.
That's how-
Bereshit.
yeah,
Shattering
that's what
takes
we
place
discussed.
first.
We discussed that way
And
back when.
if they wouldn't have, would the shattering have been contained? Would it have been limited?
If they had not,
Would the
then everything
impact
would have
not?
been
Would it
perfect.
not have had the impact?
If they had not, everything would then have been perfect.
Repaired. It would have. Everything would have been repaired.
Yes.
Yeah, it was-
Mashiach would have come like
But the
he was supposed to be.
damage was done.
Damage
But
was
it would
done.
have been repaired, maybe. Okay.
But it wasn't.
I don't think
Which-
that it was.
which-
I think that's why we.
That's
we
why we're
went
here. That's
forward
the whole
and
point.
we're doing the sacrifices.
That's why we're doing
We
it.
had
Yes.
The Mishkan and everything that was laid out
Mhm.
because of that one sin. Everything
Yeah.
changed because
Yes.
of it.
Right.
Yes.
And
Cosmic proportions.
And then we had a second chance at Har Sinai, and we screwed that up
We
as well.
we said that
correct.
lately a few weeks ago.
But I'm not so sure we had the chance. But that's a whole.
That's a different
We
discussion.
have chances, and we've had chances. We have chances. We have opportunities today.
Yeah. Anyway, all.
Which is why we're still in the same boat we're in.
Oh boy, I don't know. I don't know anymore. The more I know this, the more I don't know.
That goes without saying.
The more I know, the more I don't know.
Well, that's any intelligent person. The more you know, the more
Yeah,
you know.
I'm
you
just
don't know.
saying.
It just seems that when you read this and you digest it and you really come to understand it, and then you reflect upon the goings on in the world today, it seems like we've made such marginal, almost like incremental steps forward as far as humankind is concerned. Because
As far as what?
as far as humankind is concerned, yes, there's advancements in technology and advancements in knowledge and advancements in all, but as humans,
We still made a mess of it.
exactly, we haven't changed. We make the same mistakes. you look at it, it's basically 2 generations. You can be going down a path, and 2 generations later, everything gets messed up. So it kind of goes back to even like what we're saying is like, it is exactly the way it's supposed to be.
Right.
That's another thing. If you want to go there, in the last few months, I've heard a number of stories that have really, I don't know, are bothering me about relationships, marriages that are running into trouble, that have run into trouble, that didn't work out. I've had somebody tell me, I think my daughter, son-in-law, whichever one, I don't want to get too much detail, isn't, but the in-law, well.
It's on, is that all right?
It's okay.
All right.
I don't think they're mentally stable. I've had someone tell me this. And other stories of people not getting along with their kids, son-in-law, daughter-in-law, whatever. One of the people here told me from their children's circle, their child's okay, from their circle, 3 divorces the last year. Maybe people in their 30s. I think you have these people, and what's the connection to where we're going? You have these kids who are 20, 25, 30 years old. They meet, they don't see the warning signs. They decide to go ahead and get married. In some cases, someone might warn them. There is no experience there. How many people go through this in every generation, every decade, every year? People are going through this over and over and over. That in this case, the relationships aren't working out. You'd think that we have enough experience from thousands of years that we can anticipate better and have a better idea of what's going to happen. But every kid, and I'm especially referring to the younger people, they think, oh, okay, I'm different. I'm not going to have a problem. What happens to our collective experience? They think they're the first ones in this.
Tell me about it.
It's horrible.
Yeah.
It's horrible. It's very. It's really. I've been thinking about a lot about this. So the same thing, how we're running into trouble, running collectively, how society has all kinds of trouble and all kinds of problems. And again, what happened to our collective experience? One of the most famous lines is from a guy, Santana. I have no idea who he is, but Santana said, those who don't learn the lessons of history are doomed to repeat it. And we do this over and over.
Well,
and
it's evident in our history looking at it that we've repeated things over and over again, which is why we had the first temple and the second temple destroyed. Because we did sins, and then we repeated after the first temple, then we repeated them again. And we lost the second temple, and then we still repeated them in some ways.
If you look at...
Exactly.
We're still repeating them because we haven't learned yet.
If you look at early Germany after the war, and the battles between National Socialism and communism, or Germany, after the First World War, and the battles between National Socialism and communism, which were very similar. Both were organized with a socialistic kind of process.
Which means, and I'm saying this for the record, that they're both left-wing.
Right.
Continue.
Both are left-wing, and we now have a similar experience with Antifa and the right, so-called alt-right, who are both left-wing in terms of the neo-Nazis, which are extremely anti-capitalist and Jewish capitalism, and the Antifa, which is against anything Israel. Pointing at it.
Socially,
Similar.
collectively, individually.
From the means of control of production to the means of tariff to all forms of economic controls and establishment. It's all the same.
And in that sense, you see how little we've learned, or we've learned nothing.
We've learned nothing, because
Which
it's like I was saying a couple of weeks ago during Rabbi Wolf's JLI class, the weekly Parsha class. We were learning about idolatry, and my position is that it's still there, and it's stronger than ever before, and the new form is money. Because when you look at what you mentioned, this unfortunate scenario of divorce, the vast majority of divorces that occur are because of money. Because either the husband is making not enough, or the wife is making too much, or things are out of control, spending-wise, or whatever the case may be. And you look at all the problems today. Trump said something very interesting when he was, and the media didn't really spend much time talking about it, but he's 100% correct. And he was asked about the root cause of racism, what would make it go away. He said jobs. Mm-hmm. That's all he said, and he's 100% correct. Because again, jobs are another form of monetary reward, and people want it's basic human nature. If we don't feel like we're being rewarded or getting what is our comeuppance, so to speak, then we start becoming very banal, and there's not enough elevation going on.
Self-worth. Accomplishment.
Yeah, exactly. Which is
Contribution.
another major problem
Giving.
that human beings have is they lack self-confidence. If they had the self-confidence and the self-worth, they could rise above a lot of these petty scenarios.
Well, we've made everyone dependent. We've taken away self-confidence by making everyone dependent.
But we have, look, Moshe Rabbeinu was still a human being, and he ascended higher than any human being ever could. That doesn't mean that we can't. The Rebbe was the Rebbe. I mean, we can't. Everybody has that ability. It's just how much are you willing to push yourself? Most people aren't willing.
It's very difficult.
It's difficult.
Who said it was easy?
Someone who. Sorry, go ahead.
With the socialist process that's connected in our culture, the socialist control process that's deeply ingrained in our culture.
But that's another form of control.
It is control, and it's difficult because of that to stand up on your own, be an individual, give and contribute in this world. It's not that easy, but people can do it.
Yeah.
So again, I just read.
The repetition of the tohu. We're talking about tohu and the breaking, and then the original in the garden, the eating of the apple, and then
not the apple,
the fruit, whatever it was, grapes. Grapes. The eating of what you shouldn't have eaten, and then the golden calf, and we keep doing.
So we fall short.
We keep falling short. You're talking about relationships falling short. Then we're talking about society falling
not
short.
Learning from experience.
Right. George Santana. George Santana.
Where was he from?
He was a philosopher from
Spain.
I think he was Spanish.
Jorge.
And when?
Yeah.
19th century?
I think he was late late 1800s, I think.
Late 1800s,
I
and
believe.
then it's been repeated in many different
But I'm
ways.
not exactly sure the date.
So we don't. You know, at the end of the day,
Maybe early
you know,
1900s.
you know what that potato chip does for you, but hey, try to
That's
walk
right.
by and ignore it. And say,
Can't resist.
eat me.
Yeah.
You know?
Can't eat just one.
I can.
Well, if it's not
George-
potato chip,
George
it's something
meat.
else. It's getting up on time for Minion, or you know, putting down the cigarette, or whatever it is, or not saying, keeping your mouth closed, and not saying that comment. You know, whatever the indulgence,
Yep.
if you want to call it, whatever it is that speaks to you, and tempts you, so to be able to walk away from it is extremely difficult. But we don't. We're at the point where we lie to ourselves. You know, not where you say, you know what, I know the cigarette's bad for me, but I'm going to smoke it anyway. To the point where people say, the cigarette won't harm me. In fact, it's good for me. And that's what a lot of what you're talking about, and a lot of what we hear, where we get sold stuff, we get sold ideas that are
Really bad.
I'm going to say patently false, but which have not borne out, that lead to certain,
But they keep repeating.
lead
There's
to
a real
negative stuff.
repetition.
So you do see this, and and that's the problem. You're right. Yeah, when you read, actually, if I can go back, a couple things. You have these young kids who are in their 20s, and they go, either they come visiting a community, the yeshiva boys, or kids, or young rabbi comes out, he's 25, 26, and you have people 40, 50 years old coming and pouring their hearts out to them and asking their advice. It's like, well, you know, you're twice my age. The rabbi and the rebbetzin can be 25, 26, and what are they doing? Why are they asking these kids? Because obviously they're not asking them for their own ideas, they're asking them for the Torah that they're going to base their answer on. After Moshe died, we had Yeshua as our leader, and then the next era was about 400 years of Shoftim. The literally translated as judges, but they were the leaders of the Jewish people for the 400 years after Yehoshua. And right in the beginning of the book, it says that the theme of this era is that the people stray, they sin. Hashem allows them to be harassed. He sends someone to harass them, and they call out to Hashem. Hashem sends a shofet, a leader, to come and pull them out and save them. As long as the leader, the shofet, is alive, the people remain committed, and after he dies, they stray again, and the cycle repeats itself. That is the theme of the book of Shoftim, and it sets it out right there at the beginning of the book. It says that's what's going to happen, and you see this happening, 6, 8, 10 times over the 400 years, and that's exactly what we have. In Lahavdil, in other sources, you have one of the greatest traders of all time, the all-time greatest traders, is Jesse Livermore. I don't know if you've heard of him, but a very interesting, a compelling read, a very interesting story. Jesse Livermore, and he gave some of the principles that traders follow today. One of the things he said is that every 20, 30 years we're destined for a crash, because the new generation comes up who didn't get burned in the last crash, and they take these risks and push the market up, and then it crashes on them. They learn their lesson, and then 20, 30 years later, the next generation goes through the same thing. I mean, you see now, I don't know if you guys follow, you read, right? So, at an election day, how many months ago? 10 months ago? Yeah, about 9 months ago or 10 months ago, election day, the Dow was somewhere in the 17,000s, was under 18,000, right? Now it's
Almost 22.
It's 22,000. That's 25% higher, roughly.
Mhm.
Where does that come from? It's
Psychology.
yeah, psychology. So it's pumped and pumped and pumped, and it's not based on anything tangible. And everyone's saying like it gets very. Most people are saying it gets very precarious up there. You got to be careful.
Mhm.
What was the span of time between the destruction of the first and second temples?
How much time?
Yeah.
It was 70 years. From the destruction to the official start of the new one. It was exactly 70 years.
No, you said destruction?
No, the destruction between the first and the second. When the second was
490 years.
destroyed. It's almost 500 years.
Yeah.
Mhm.
Yeah.
And how long has it been since the second one was destroyed?
1,900 and
So basically 2,000 years.
70s.
49 years.
So 3 times longer.
Not sure exactly which year. It could be give or take a year. What did I say? 1,949 years, give or take.
Almost 4 times.
Hmm?
It's almost 4 times.
Almost 4 times.
Almost 4 times greater. No, well, you've got the 500 and then to 2,000, so it's 3 times. You got the 500 plus the 3 times is the 2,000.
You talking from the first temple or from
From the second temple.
It's been. So we're trying
I
to
mean,
think.
it was the first one, from the first one. So from the first one to the second one was
490
years.
You're right.
And then it's been 1490 since
1940.
1940.
1940.
Yeah, higher.
Well, think of it this way. If I understand what you're asking, the point that you're making, think of it this way. When we had the second Beis Hamikdash, we were like settling for second class in a way.
Mhm.
So we were able to go ahead and rebuild it. Right now, we're going for the gold. When we have the third Beis Hamikdash, it's going to be with Mashiach.
Right.
So we have a lot more work to do than what they had.
Before Hashem will build it.
Yeah. Okay?
Yep.
Okay.
Okay.
So go home, eat supper, and elevate those sparks.
Okay.
In fact, can you wait a second? There was, Hillel would say,
Turn this off?
no, keep it on.
Okay.
Hillel would say, when he would go eat, he'd say he's going to do a favor for his instinctive soul.
Hmm.
Which means, for me, my godly soul, I'm okay. But, now we're going to go elevate. We got to elevate sparks too,
Mhm.
and help out the instinctive soul. So that was his
Mhm.
that was his line. That was his perspective on why he had to eat.
Good.
Okay.
Sounds good.
Good.
Great. Thank you all.
Thank
Thank
you.
you.
Next week we should be fine.
Next week's
Yeah.
next week's a go.
Hmm?
It's a go, I said.
It's a go. Thank you all.
So,
hit the wrong button.
because I wanted to ask you a question.
1 second, please.
I just want to tell you.